What's going on, everyone? What's up, Will? Good to see you. How you doing, bro? Thanks for the birthday wishes, by the way. I appreciate it. And listen, as you come on in, just share this feed, this live feed, if you could. I'm really excited about it because I feel like I haven't had this urge in such a strong way in a while to share a particular message on Facebook. So I really know that people are going to be blessed by it. So I urge you, as you come on in, share it with your Facebook followers. It's really going to really set some people free. But good to see you, bro. You know, we got to link up. We always say that. We always say we got to link up, and then we don't. But anyway, Will, good to see you. And yeah, man, I was just the other day, I was talking to someone and they indicated, hey, what's up, Beatrice? Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you again for the birthday wishes. I appreciate it. I receive it all. Love you guys. By the way, I had a great birthday. Let me start off with that. Yesterday was my birthday, for those who don't know. Turned 41. Yes, the big 4-1. I know I don't look it, but yes, turned 41. Had a great time. And it was awesome. You know, just did a little shopping, hung out with family, friends. They threw me a little surprise party, so that was really cool. So yeah, I'm excited for another year. I'm excited for this year. It's gonna be awesome for me, and thank you for everyone who just showed me some love. I really appreciate it. But tonight, I really want to talk to you about how do you forgive when you're in pain, and should you forgive? That's another question I want to address. Should you forgive? How do you forgive? Why you should forgive? You know, forgiveness is like a very emotional and touchy topic. Hey, everyone. Thank you for coming in. Just share it if you could. As I was saying earlier, I really feel that God wants to really use me to share this important message on forgiveness. I rarely feel a strong urge to, but tonight I'm going to, and I know a lot of people are going to be touched by it. But, you know, the question tonight is, how do you actually forgive when you are in pain? You know, it's one thing to forgive when you're not in pain, when you're healed up, when you're good. What's up, Risa? How you doing? It's one thing to forgive when you're whole, when you're like intact. But how do you forgive when you're not? How do you forgive, and should you? And that's a legitimate question that I want you to think about. Should you actually forgive? Is that something that is always in your best interest to forgive? Is there ever a time where, you know what, holding out on forgiveness is the best way to go? Is that ever an option? Is that ever true? So I want to really talk to you about that. But you know, the first thing I want to tell you really is two things are true. Whether you want to believe it or not, two things are true. One, you will come across a situation where you're going to get hurt and you're going to have to make a decision whether or not you're going to forgive or not. That's inevitable. That's going to happen. It is impossible to live a life free of being hurt, free of being offended. That is going to happen. And so I want to just first tell you, first and foremost, expect to get hurt by people. It's just part of the deal. I mean, that's just what it is. In life, you're going to be misunderstood. In life, you're going to be mistreated. In life, you'll be rejected. I know that doesn't sound like great news, but I'm just kind of like laying a foundation here. You just gotta have it in your mind that this is part of life. You know, people are going to hurt you. People are going to disappoint you. And you know what? Most often than not, they won't even know. And it won't even have been something that they did on purpose. But you will get hurt by people. Just understand that. It's just part of life. It's part of the deal. So how do you forgive when you're in pain? You know, one of the things I just want to just put out there, just expect that pain is inevitable. People will disappoint you. The second thing I really want you to know, and this is something that we probably don't think about, but you're also going to hurt people. You're also going to come across a situation where people need your forgiveness, or you need their forgiveness, I should say. And so I want you to think about that for a second, because a lot of times we focus on people hurting us, but have you ever considered the fact that you have hurt somebody? Have you ever considered the fact that maybe you need someone to forgive you? Because that's also part of the deal. That's going to happen. You're going to offend somebody. You're going to hurt somebody. It's inevitable. Like me, I'll tell you, I consider myself a cool person. I consider myself a reasonable person, a loving person. I'm patient with people. I consider myself all of that. And I really am. I'm not bragging, but I think I am. But I also know that I'm going to hurt people. Not because I want to, not because I mean to, because I'm a human being. And sometimes I'll misunderstand someone. Sometimes I might overlook someone. Sometimes I might just, just maybe I was having a bad day and I reacted to something wrong. It's part of the deal, and you got to understand you're going to be hurt and you are going to hurt people. If you understand those two things, right? And I think we're always clear on the first part. We always understand that people will hurt us. That's very, very clear to us. But I do think we forget that we also hurt people. We do. We also neglect people. We reject people. We don't pay attention to the things that matter to people. There's a lot of times that you are in a position to help and you just maybe you just didn't, and you could have. So if you really put yourself in the people population, because a lot of times we like to say, oh, people will do this and people will do that. But listen, you're part of the people population. You're a person too. And you will be the source of someone's pain. And if you understand that, it should make forgiving people a little easier thank you for the birthday wish. I appreciate that, Jake. It will make things easier for you to forgive. So I want to let you know that first and foremost, you're going to hurt people. People are going to hurt you. But let me just go and give the best example that we could ever come up with when it comes to forgiving. Very simple. And guys, please share it if you can. Let other people know about this feed, because it's really going to help some people. I'm going to share some things with you that's going to make a huge difference. I'm telling you, you're going to be able to walk free from pain, and you're going to be able to have healthy relationships if you learn these few things that I'm going to share with you. So, number one, I want you to understand that Jesus himself forgave in pain, not in glory. And I want you to really think about that. He forgave in pain, not just in glory. So what I mean by that is, while he was on the cross, the scriptures show, while he was on the cross, I want you to think about that. While he was on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. So let's get a picture of what that looks like. While he was literally bleeding, while they were literally mocking, laughing, while they were literally spitting, while they were literally questioning who he actually was and tempting him, saying, listen, if you are who you say you are, come off from the cross. While they were doing that, that's when he forgave. And that's what teaches me something about forgiveness. Is because sometimes what we struggle with is that we're waiting to feel a certain way to forgive. We're waiting to feel whole. We're waiting to feel strengthened, restored, intact. And now that we're good, now that we're healed, now that that storm has passed, all right, now let me release forgiveness. But I want you to know something, that Jesus didn't wait till he was whole. He didn't wait until he was intact. He didn't wait till he rose from the grave. He didn't wait for his mockers to turn into his supporters. He forgave while he was on the cross, while he was in pain, while he was being mocked. And the reason why I keep emphasizing that is because this teaches me this, that forgiveness is not based on a feeling. Forgiveness isn't a feeling. And when I learned that, yo, that really set me free, because I used to wonder if I really forgave, if I still feel a certain way. You know, like let's just say someone betrayed your trust, they stole from you, they lied on you, they did whatever. And you think, all right, I'm gonna forgive them, and you made a decision to forgive them, and then there's a feeling that comes up and you're like, man, did I actually forgive? But yes, you know what? The reality is it's possible that you forgave, but the feelings will still come up, and now you have a decision to make. You can hold on to those feelings, or you can remind yourself of a decision you made in the past. And that decision is, I forgive. So forgiveness, if you would get this to me is like the most important part. I'm gonna really share with you. Forgiveness is not based on feelings. It's based on a decision that you make by faith. Think about it. Did Jesus feel like forgiving? I mean, do you think he was in a mood while nails were, through his hands, and they were mocking him, and he had a crown of thorns on his head, and he's bleeding, and he's practically naked on the cross, and they're laughing at him and they're mocking him? And do you think he was in a mood to say, yeah, you know what, I just feel like doing this? No, he didn't. I'm going to tell you, in his humanity, he didn't. When they were tempting him, saying, hey, if you are who you say you are, come off the cross. You don't think his humanity was like, yo, I could just wipe you guys out in a second? You don't think that kicked in and he had to suppress that and say, you know what? Let me yield my will to the greater plan of God. I'm telling you, that's what he had to do. So while he was on the cross, he forgave in pain, not in glory. And I think that's a very important part to remember. So forgiveness is done in faith, not in feelings. Now, if you forgive by faith, this is what's going to happen. Be honest with you, because there's some people, people who have really experienced some great, great hurt. I'll be honest with you. I'm blessed in that I've lived 41 years now, and I haven't experienced like really, really like terrible tragedy in my life. And I pray that I don't. I've had, great relationships, great friendships. I've been hurt like anybody, that goes without saying, but I haven't really experienced great betrayal, people really stabbing you in the back, people, not that I know of at least, I haven't really experienced it to that degree. And I thank God for that. But I do understand that there are people who really have gone through some grimy stuff. There are people who have been molested as a child. There are people who have been stolen from. I know people who have to act, when they hear this message, you know what they're thinking about? They're thinking about people they might have to forgive that have killed a loved one of theirs. I think about that. What is it like to have to forgive someone who murdered someone you love? Think about that. What is it like to have to forgive someone who assaulted someone you care about, maybe even yourself? See, forgiveness is something that is very, very powerful, because no matter if it's the smallest thing that we would call small or the largest, it doesn't make a difference. God requires all of us to forgive. And here's the one reason why. And I really want you to think about this, because this is important. The number one reason why God requires you to forgive is because you have been forgiven. That's the reason why. Now, I'm gonna say something, because I know that in this modern day that we're living in, many people, they think that forgiveness is not for the person that you're forgiving, it's actually for you. And they'll say that. They'll say, oh, forgiveness is not for the person, it's so that you can be free. And, in my church, I've taught this a few times. The reality is that's not true. That is not true. You forgive people for them. And this really highlights the power of forgiveness. Now, I'm not here to tell you that there's no benefits for you. Of course, there's benefits. Yes, you'll be free. Yes, there'll be some things that will unlock in your life. But that's the secondary reason why you forgive. The very first reason why you forgive is because you've been forgiven. The scriptures teach us that we are to forgive because we've been forgiven. When God forgave us, he wasn't forgiving us so that he can be free, so that he is not poisoned by bitterness. No, he forgave because he recognized that we needed it. And there is a power in holding unforgiveness. And some people realize that. So they've been hurt by someone and they say, you know what, I'm going to hold this against them because I know if I hold it against them, I can manipulate them. I can make them feel guilty. I can cause them to feel the pain that I feel. And you don't realize it that when you choose not to forgive, you are actually hurting the person that has offended you. And maybe that's the goal. I mean, maybe that's why people don't forgive. They want to hurt. They want to hurt the person that offended. They want them to feel guilty. They want them to feel the pain. But I want you to know something. When you do that, you're raising your standard above God's, because the reality is God sees that individual as deserving of your forgiveness. Why? Because they were deserving of his. I didn't say they earned it. I said they deserved it. He saw their need and he forgave them. So really the number one reason why you should forgive is because you've been forgiven. Think about that. When I think about people who have hurt me, because I've been hurt before, like I said, nothing crazy. I haven't, had any crazy betrayals in my life, but I've been hurt. I've been rejected. I felt the pain of insults and different things like that. But one of the reasons why I can walk in forgiveness is because I thank God for this. I have a real clear understanding that I have been forgiven. And I don't look at my issues and my offenses against God and the things that I've done wrong. I don't look at that as, oh, that's just minor. Like, I never did that. I never said that. No, I look at it, I believe, in the way that God sees it, that all kinds of sin, no matter what it is, all kinds of sin is deserving of eternal death and separation from the Father. But God in his mercy sent his son to pay that debt and forgive me of my sin. If you would ponder on that and really think about that, that would free you to forgive. Because when we don't, what we're saying is, look, what God forgave me of is minor in comparison to what this person did. And the reality is that's not true. It's not true. And so I want to really encourage you, first and foremost, understand that you can forgive, but you have to understand that you have also been forgiven. God saw you, he saw your need, and your issue and my issue would have sent us to hell. I know that's like a harsh thing to understand, but for those who understand the doctrine of hell, it's a real thing. And we were so unlike God, so incompatible, so not like who he was, that there would be no way to coexist with him. So we would have been eternally separated from him. But he did something about it. The Bible says that while we were enemies of God, think about that, enemies, not just you offended God. In scripture, it teaches that you were his enemy. Enemy. That means you had beef with God. Yet he did something about it. He paid that debt in the person of Christ. So the number one reason why you should forgive in your pain is because you've been forgiven. You've been forgiven. And like I said before, forgiveness is a blessing to the person. I know some people, if they would just release forgiveness over an individual, or towards an individual, that individual will be released from all forms of condemnation and feelings of guilt, and it would create a harmonious relationship. I know people right now that if they would just say, you know what, I release this and I'm not going to bring it up. I'm not going to recall and rehash the things that you've done. No, it's completely cool. We're completely cool and I receive you and I love you. If they were to do that, you don't realize how that would unlock something in that individual's life. Let me tell you something. There is a power in holding forgiveness. When you choose to hold it and you're like, no, I'm not going to release it, you do hurt people. I know we want to think, I don't care whether you forgive me or not. I'm good. I go on with my life. But the reality is that's not true. When you hold something against someone, you also position yourself as an enemy. You position yourself in a place where you can't be a blessing to them. You might even influence others on how they see that individual. That's why unforgiveness is so serious, because it does hurt people. And we have to realize that when you don't forgive, you do hurt people. And you're putting your standard of forgiveness above God. So let me just repeat that one more time. You can forgive first and foremost because you've been forgiven. You've been forgiven, and therefore you have the power to release that same gift. And when you do that, you're releasing blessing over an individual. I'm telling you, and keep in mind what I said in the beginning, you will need to be forgiven. You may not think you won't, or you'll need that, but trust me, you will need it. You will need someone to overlook a fault. You will need someone to overlook a misunderstanding. Trust me. And if you would be that kind of person that would overlook, and not overlook in terms of excuse behavior that's bad, but overlook meaning I'm not going to hold it against you. If you were to live that kind of life, trust me, you're sowing seeds for someone to show that same kind of favor towards you. So trust and believe you're going to need somebody one day to forgive you. You're going to need somebody to think better of you than an offense that they just experienced from you. You're going to need somebody to say, you know what? Look, I'm going to give you more credit than that. I'm not going to hold that against you. And if you would sow the seed of forgiveness, I guarantee you'll position yourself in the future to always receive the harvest of forgiveness. We all need people to overlook things that we've done wrong. We all need people to say, don't worry about it, man. I understand. You just had a bad day. It's cool. And that relationship is not severed, and you can continue to enjoy the favor and grace that God intended you to enjoy from that. We all need that. I need that, and you need that. And then I would say one last thing, and I think we're very familiar with this. Truly forgiving people, yeah, it is a blessing to you. Because when you choose not to forgive, it does put you in a place of just having toxins built up in your heart, in your soul, in your mind, and you're not in a position where you can be blessed. You're not in a position where you can receive God's best. And so I would encourage you, certainly forgive first and foremost because you've been forgiven. Forgive because it's a blessing to others, and forgive because it positions you to receive blessing from God. I know the story, I've shared this many times, and it's just amazing how this works. But there was an individual, I believe it's Jerry Savelle, who actually shares this, how he was once called to the hospital to minister to some ministry partners of his. It was a husband and wife, and the wife was dying of cancer. And as he was driving to the hospital, he didn't know much about their relationship. He didn't really have a deep insight on it. But he heard the Lord say, I want to heal this woman of cancer, but she's going to have to forgive her husband. So he went with that, and he got to the hospital, and they're kind of talking and just kind of getting familiar with each other, and then she wants him to pray for her. So he tells her, he says, listen, I want to pray, and the Lord wants to heal you, but I heard the Lord say, you need to forgive your husband. Now remember, she's dying of cancer. She could barely lift herself up. She's very weakened. She's at stage 4. She literally has hours, maybe a couple of days to live at most. And she musters up the strength to pull herself up from the bed. And she says with all conviction, I will never forgive him for what he did to me. That's what she said. And he said, well, there's nothing I could do for you then. I mean, she was very clear about that. I will never forgive. And when she said that, her husband began to bawl and cry, and began to say, my goodness, I've asked and begged for her to forgive me for all these years. It was a mistake. And I think it was like 20 years ago, he cheated on her. And he said, I tried to make amends. I tried to do everything I can to fix it. She won't forgive me. And he was brokenhearted. Here she is on her deathbed, and he's still there. So obviously, this is not a man that was like, yeah, I cheated and what? I mean, he obviously regarded her to the point where even though he wasn't forgiven by her for all these years, and she held it against him for all these years, while she's about to die, he's still by her bedside. And she says, I will never forgive him. And he's crying, and he's, in great agony. And then Jerry says, you know what? That's a decision that you made, and I can't do anything about it. So he leaves the hospital, and a few hours later, I think maybe no more than 12, he gets a call and she passed. She went on to be with the Lord. And I know that's another doctrinal thing that people say, well, can you make it to heaven if you don't forgive? I won't get into that right now, but I'll just say, yeah, you can. It's a sin like any other sin. But the reality is her life was cut short because she chose not to forgive. Now, that's a dramatic situation, but how many relationships are cut short? People's financial well-being is cut short simply because someone decided, I will never forgive this person for what they did. Let me tell you something. Jesus forgave while he was in pain, not in glory. He didn't wait till he resurrected. He didn't wait until Peter came around and saw and he was able to rebuke him. And he didn't wait until Thomas believed. No, while he was on the cross. So I want you to know you might be in pain right now. You might really feel the hurt. And you're saying to yourself, all right, that sounds cool. That's great. That's Jesus. But how does that really, how do I do that? Like, how can I literally, while I'm in pain, forgive? So let me touch on some points again, but let me elaborate on how this works. Keep in mind, forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a decision. I want you to think about it. If you can write that down for yourself, forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a decision. What that means is that you might not feel like it. Even after you say, I forgive so-and-so for whatever they did, you still might be mad. And that's okay. That's okay, because I used to think, again, if I'm mad, then I didn't really forgive. No, in fact, forgiveness is not a feeling. It is a decision you make by faith. So let's just say someone stole from you, murdered, someone that you love, or I'm taking the worst example that I could possibly take. Let's just say someone really just did something really, really harmful to you. What do? Let's say the person's name is Joe, right? Father, I'm mad at Joe. I really feel like punching this in his face. I feel like, you could be real and be honest with God and say, this is what I feel like. But, and that's really important. You got to come to a place where you're making a resolve. You shared your feelings, that's great. But this is really what I should do. Your word says that I should forgive because I've been forgiven. And I'm not going to make it so that what Joe did to me is the worst thing that could ever be done in all humanity. No. What was done to Jesus on the cross was worse, and he forgave. So I'm choosing. I don't feel like it. I don't want to. But I'm choosing by faith to forgive Joe. So from this point forward, Joe, I forgive you. And you're saying this to yourself, you're saying this to the Lord. Maybe Joe's not in the room, but you're saying, Joe, you know what? I forgive you. Now, next week, you're on social media, you see Joe. You see Joe living his best life. And you're like, yo, that's that dude right there that took my money. That's the dude that said this. And then those feelings start to come up again. What do? Is it like you're saying to yourself, oh, I guess I didn't forgive because I'm mad? No, you did forgive. What you got to do at that point is to remind yourself of the decision you made. So, I feel tempted to get mad again. I feel tempted to be upset again. I feel tempted to lash out again. But I'm going to remember the decision to forgive. So, Father, I recognize this temptation. I recognize that I'm hurt. I recognize that this still seems to bother me a little bit, but forgiveness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. So I release Joe from that. Joe, I forgive you. I forgave you already. Be blessed by God. May God do his best work in you. And that's another key in walking in forgiveness. Jesus said it this way. He said, bless those who curse you. Do good to those who spitefully use you or persecute you. Sometimes the way to walk in forgiveness is you got to release that feeling that you have, and you got to release it in blessing. So pray for that individual. Bless that individual with the gift. Whatever you need to do, release goodness towards that individual. Why? This is not done by feelings. Your feelings will follow your faith. But you got to make a decision based on what is right. And here's the reality. If you don't remember anything, just please take this with you. It gets harder the longer you wait. It gets harder. And this is why I believe Jesus forgave while he was in pain. This is why while he was on the cross, he's like, no. I'm not going to the grave holding bitterness. I'm not going to the grave mad. I'm not going to the grave upset at what they did. So while he was on the cross, he forgave. I believe that the reason why a lot of times it gets harder to forgive is because we didn't do it while we were in pain. We waited until we were good. We waited until we were restored. We felt like we had our bounce back. But the reality is that's a deception. That doesn't happen the way you think it will. And it gets harder and harder and harder and harder the longer you wait, because you build up these structures of offense, and it begins to cement into your heart. And then this situation happens, and now you're offended by that. And then this happens, now you're offended by that. And now this happens, you're offended by that. And then what's happening? You're building a monument of hurt on the inside. And that's the reason why when you're offended, the best thing to do is to release forgiveness immediately. You might ask, what if they don't apologize? What if they don't ask for forgiveness? That's not your business. Your business is to be whole, and is to bless them. And it's to say, you know what? I need to forgive, because if I do not, I'm positioning myself as if I'm God. I'm saying that their offense towards me is the worst thing that could have ever happened. And it's not. It's not. And I want you to know something. God wants you to walk in forgiveness because, like I said before, it causes you to walk like him, talk like him. It positions you for greater blessing. And if you don't, you'll be building a monument of offense. And this is why people who don't forgive, they're very sensitive. Anybody says anything to them, they think the most negative. So someone could overlook something and they'll judge it as you've overlooked it because you think negatively of me. You don't like me. You're against me. This happens because you haven't released pain immediately, right? And so I've learned when someone hurts me, because we all will be hurt. And like I said in the beginning, you will hurt people also. Let's be real. Don't act like you haven't hurt somebody. Don't act like you haven't said something that was foul. You need to be forgiven by people, and you need to forgive people. That's just a fact. And if you don't get that, you will be slow to forgive, and you'll be quick to get angry and quick to be bitter. And that is a recipe for a disastrous life. So, my friends, I want to tell you really very plainly, very bluntly, walk in forgiveness. I get this question a lot. The reason why I felt a strong urge to put this on the video is because that's a question I get so often. Like, man, how do I actually walk free from this? How do I actually forgive this individual who has done this to me? Let me tell you something, just to repeat it. Don't wait for the feeling. Don't wait till you feel like doing it. That feeling won't ever come. It's a lie. It's a deception. You won't ever be in the mood to forgive someone who's hurt you. You just won't. It's just not part of your human fleshly nature. You got to do it by faith, and the feelings will follow. That's how I live my life. That's how I endeavor to live my life. I live by what I believe. I don't live by what I feel. Because what I feel is subject to change. And if you live by what you believe, if you live by faith, if you live by what is true, feelings will follow. But here's another thing that's also true. If you live by feelings, if you live by your feelings, the reverse is true as well. Faith in what you feel will also follow. And that is a destructive way of living, because you'll start to believe what you feel. And sometimes what you feel isn't true. Sometimes what you feel isn't really accurate. Sometimes you think someone meant something and they didn't really mean it. And the reason why it's so hard to get from your feelings is because you lived by it. So now your faith followed that. You lived by it. You've confessed it. You've said it. You've thought about it. You've held on to it. And what happened? Now you have a strong faith for it. I want to encourage you, live by faith in the word, and your feelings will follow that. If you live by faith in the word, your feelings will follow. So before I tie up really quick, think about who you need to forgive. I'm going to give you guys a second. Think about it. It could be a spouse. It could be It could be, yo, let me get real with you. It could even be, this is gonna really, this is gonna touch a little, some nerves here, I think. It could even be your political leaders. I know we live in a very politically charged environment, right? And it's kind of like, it's hard to keep our political leaders a certain way, right? Here's a question: do they need your forgiveness? Now, don't mistake this. I'm not saying that forgiveness means you accept and condone what's being done, but it does mean you're not walking with a bitterness and a toxic feeling about an individual. How about that? How about your political leaders? How about spiritual leaders? There are people who are bitter against spiritual leaders. And listen, worldwide, universally, sometimes spiritual leaders have dropped the ball. They've hurt people. No question about it. It has happened, and it will continue to happen. Have you forgiven? I'm not asking have you condoned, but have you forgiven? How about your spouse? How about an ex-boyfriend, an ex-girlfriend, a friend? Have you forgiven? I want you to think about that. Think about it in the context of your life. So let's go back to politics, because like I said, that's a very big deal today. You know how you stay free from feeling, a constant anger? Like, I know people who are constantly posting and sharing every little thing that the president is doing, every little thing that Congress is doing. There's memes going back and forth. And I asked myself, I said, okay, who is this really helping? Is this really helping anybody, or is this just venting how you feel? And I realized we can feed into that and be a toxic society, or we could be about the business of changing things, but changing it from a perspective of being whole on the inside. So while you're hurt, while you're in pain, while you don't like certain things, here's the key: release forgiveness, release blessing. So I even challenged my church a couple of weeks ago. I said, listen, we're going to pray for our president. Yeah, I don't call him number 45. I call him our president, because he is, right? It doesn't matter whether I want him to be or not. He is. So we're going to pray for him. We're going to pray for our elected officials. It doesn't matter if I want them to be our elected officials or not. They are. So I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to bless them. I'm going to say, Lord, do good to them. But I'm also going to pray that they change where they need to be changed. I'm also going to pray that they'll have a conviction of righteousness where it's needed. I'm also going to pray that they be removed if they're not for the people. I'm also going to pray that good people will be put in that position. So it's not a passive role we're talking about. We're not talking about just sitting behind and just allowing things to happen and just being okay with things. No, it's just saying, I am not going to sit back and be bitter. I'm not going to sit back and be hurt. I'm not going to sit back and complain. I'm going to take an active role and release the force of forgiveness. That's how things change. You feel me? So how about, your boss, your supervisors, people that, you work with, your coworkers? Everybody is deserving of forgiveness. That's a radical statement to make, but it's so true. Everybody is deserving of forgiveness. Now, I'll just say this. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. I can forgive you, but because you're still a certain way and you haven't changed, we can't have relationship. So just keep that in mind. So let's just say you're in a relationship and a man is beating on you. I don't expect you to stay in that relationship. No, don't stay in that relationship. But you can walk away from that relationship and still forgive them and say, this person is a human being deserving of God's love, and I'm going to think good of them. I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to wish well upon them, but I'm not going to be with them. That's the way you take the word of forgiveness and apply it to your everyday life. Let me tell you something. Nothing hurts the heart of God, I think, more than when we say, I've been forgiven by God, but you know what? I'm refusing to forgive others. That hurts the heart of God. That's exalting ourselves above God. And I want to encourage you, don't do that. Don't do that. And so forgiveness is something you can do. You can do it in pain. You can do it today. If you do it today, I guarantee you it'll be easier to do it today than it'll be tomorrow. It's not something that you should wait until you feel like doing. Do it now. Jesus forgave in pain, not in glory. And if you would do that, you'll find yourself to be a whole person, someone who is not jaded, someone who can trust again, who can love again, someone who can have wholesome relationships again. You can. And that's my wish for you. That's what I'm believing for you. That's what I'm trusting for you. You know, like I said, we've all been hurt before. We all know what that's about. We all know how that feels, right? We all know, we get it. But you can forgive in pain, and I trust that you will. So, guys, that's really all I have for you tonight. Thank you listen. Share this. Before I go, let me maybe you're just jumping in. What's up, Keisha? What's up, Steve? Great to see you guys. If you didn't catch the whole thing, replay it. Trust me, it'll bless you. Share it with others. I really feel like God wants to help people forgive. It's a freeing thing. It really is. It's a very, very freeing thing. And we should all do it. Have a great night. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.